would like to start out by saying that I'm aware that my reaction to this situation was very stupid, which is one of the reasons I don't often talk about it. I just have a tendency to freeze up and become docile in dangerous situations, even though in my head I'm screaming at myself to run or fight back. That being said, here's what happened. I was living with my stepsister in a small apartment, and we both worked night shifts. I usually got home a few hours before she did. I had just gotten home when there was a knock at the door. I didn't recognize the guy through the peephole, but assumed it was one of her friends and opened the door to tell him that she was still at work. He surprised me when he said that he was here to see me, though. He said that he lived a few doors down, and that he'd seen me carrying a guitar case to and from my car and wanted to know if I played. I said I did. It was apparent at this point that the man was very drunk. He asked if I'd be willing to play something for him. I knew that was a bad idea, but I didn't know how to say no, so I just said sure. He came inside and he locked the door behind him. Not the greatest sign, but this was already not going well anyway. He tried to follow me into my bedroom as I fetched the guitar, but I managed to tell him to sit on the couch in the living room so he'd be more comfortable. I played a song or two and he started crying and said that I had the voice of an angel. He wanted to play a song for me, if that was okay. I said sure, but he was fumbling around with it and didn't seem to know how to play. He assured me that the problem was my guitar. He was used to an electric, you see. He used to be the lead guitarist for Metallica, actually, but left shortly before they became famous. In fact, most of their songs were originally his, and they stole them. Obviously, I didn't believe a word of it, but nodded and acted sympathetic. He wanted to prove to me that he was a really good guitar player, and asked me to come over to his place so that he could play his electric guitar. Again, I knew that this was an awful idea. It was bad enough letting some drunk stranger into my house, but leaving with him would be even worse. Still though, he insisted, and again, I didn't know how to refuse. His place was a mess. He couldn't even find his guitar. Then he said that he forgot that he sold it a long time ago. He offered to put on the newer Star Wars movie and we could drink some beer instead. I think it was the second prequel, but I can't remember. I said that was fine, so he put on the movie and said some stuff about how his family was involved in filming it, and various other claims that were obviously ridiculous. About 20 minutes into the movie, he told me that he had something to confess. He said that a dark force came to him every night, and that it was Satan, and that Satan kept telling him to kill me. He started crying again and said that he didn't want to kill me because I was so nice and was probably an angel or something. He also said that Satan would soon take over his body, so I needed to leave immediately if I wanted to live. Well, I was more than fine with that, so I got up to go. Before I could get to the door, he asked me to wait because he wanted to give me a gift. He said that it was an ancient coin that had been in his family for generations, and it was probably worth $1 million by now. He put it into my hand, closed my fingers around it, and said some weird gibberish while crying. Then he just screamed at me to run. I looked at it after I got the hell out of there, and it was just some ordinary silver dollar from 1972. I still have it, actually. I feel like I should have called the police or done something about what happened, but I never did. I just hope that he never hurt anybody, and that he got the help that he obviously desperately needed. My father was a stereotypical deadbeat drug addict. He injected, snorted, smoked, anything that he could get his hands on, and was prone to extreme violence. There are a million stories that I could tell you, but I'm going to focus on one in particular for this story. Despite what my mum was going through, she stayed with my father because of me. She desperately wanted to have a loving home life where I could experience the joy of having both parents. I didn't really realize how bad things were until I got older and really thought back on the past. My father would buy drugs before he fed me, take me to crack houses in terrible neighborhoods, bring me to houses of his friends, and left me to entertain myself while he cheated on my mother. I woke up almost every morning to him being covered in his own piss and vomit, in fact. I could never understand why my mother was so upset, and what she was putting herself through, working 10-hour days just to come home to her own hell. My mum's breaking point was when I had found a strange white powder on my bookshelf and was playing with it one day when I was home alone. We tried to leave for the first time that night. My mum and I gathered the small things that we could fit in her bags, stuffed it in the back of her truck, and drove to her sister's house. It took about 2 days for my father to find us, and the fallout was exponentially worse than we could have ever imagined. No child wants to give up on a parent, no matter how abusive they are. My father was crying on the doorsteps to my aunt's house, pleading his case on how he would give up drugs if we just came home with him. I actually believed him, and my mum and we returned home. Everything was exactly how it was left, except 2 of our dining room chairs were placed in the middle of the kitchen. As I entered our apartment, though, I heard him smash my mum's head against the entry wall to the left. She wasn't knocked out, but the sound that it made was vile, like a bag of meat being thrown on the floor. As she collapsed from the pain, I remember turning around confused. I felt a weird sense of anger I haven't felt since, where everything inside felt like I was on fire. I just ran at my dad, and the next part was like a movie. He threw a punch so fast that I couldn't see it coming. I woke up tied to the chair, not being able to hear properly and not knowing where I was. My nose was plugged with something too. I looked around the room, and my father was by the stove boiling water. One hand was tied out stretched. I couldn't focus on anything, and the light was piercing. The most intense pain I've ever felt to this day was having the water poured over my hand. I had never seen my mum cry before this. If it wasn't for the neighbours calling the police, I think my mum and I would have died there. I was brought to hospital and treated for second-degree burns covering 75% of my hand. Once the blister healed, there were 2 huge ones and 1 small one. The skin, once they popped it, was weirdly smooth. I also had a fractured orbital bone and a broken nose. My mum filed for divorce the next day, and my dad was charged with aggravated assault and was given orders not to contact anyone in our family until trial had concluded. I thought everything was going to be okay. I did wish things had played out differently, that I had a normal dad, but at least my mum and I were safe now. My mum and I found a new apartment, and I spent most of my time in my room. After a month, my mum forced me to go out and ride my bike. After about 2 blocks, I saw it. That old Ford with the New York Ranger sticker on the bumper. My father loved the Rangers. I biked full speed into a large park directly in front of me. The exits were too small for a car to fit in. I watched as my father circled the park in his car. If I crossed it, he was going to be waiting for me there, no doubt. I turned to my left and tried to double back to the path that ran beside the one that I entered from, using the houses surrounding the park as cover. I didn't scream for help. I had no thoughts besides run, run, run. He pulled up at the end of the exit, though, and said something like, "I'm your father. I just want you to come home with me." Everything he said was slurred and almost incoherent. He got out, hugged me, and I hugged him back. As I was walking away to leave, his hand covered my mouth, and his other grabbed me by my waist. He popped the trunk, and he stuffed me in it. The darkness engulfed me. The only sounds were those of a radio set to a police station. I could hear them faintly over casual sounds of the road and the car's moving parts. I have seen in a TV show that some cars have a trunk release from the inside. I couldn't find it though if it was there, because it was just too dark. I tried crawling around for anything to use to get out. My hand just ran over some empty bags and papers with some plastic tubing. Nothing that I could even try to defend myself with. I thought about what was going to happen to me. I wondered if he would kill me once the car stopped. I wondered if he was just driving away with me and was going to try and start a new life with me so my mum could never see me again. I thought about how my mum would react. I knew that she would blame herself. All this thinking, and I lost track of time, even though I'd find out later that it hadn't been that long. After 20 minutes though, my father lost control of the vehicle and crashed into an oncoming car on a semi-busy road. I was thrown around in the trunk. I broke 2 ribs from the impact, refractured my still unhealed orbital bone, as well as dislocating my shoulder. My father died on impact. The trunk had popped open in the crash. Feeling the fresh air, mixed with the metallic taste of blood hitting my mouth, was the last thing that I can still vividly remember. The ambulance was the first to arrive at the scene. They were afraid to move me, as I could have been paralyzed easily from a crash like that. Apparently, I was just murmuring incoherent gibberish. They pricked my feet with a pen, and when they moved, they loaded me onto an ambulance, while police arrived on the scene. Once at the hospital, I had my clothes cut and replaced by a blanket. They placed me in another dark room, the only determinable feature being a TV tuned to Dora the Explorer. The nurse was trying to explain to me that I was being put to sleep so the doctors could help me. I screamed. I wasn't going to sleep no matter what they did to me. I slowly drifted off fighting the restraints, less and less. I woke up being wheeled back and started screaming and crying as loud as I could. My mum and the rest of my family were there. I was confused, but they talked me down. And I spent the rest of the week watching every episode of Pokemon I think they've ever made. I'm still not okay with what happened 100%, but I feel like maybe getting it out there might make me feel a bit better. I did get into drugs and alcohol for a bit to help with the pain, but I kicked it because I didn't want to end up like him. I just often think about what life would have been like if I had been born into a normal family with a normal father. G'day mates, it's Busta here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all here, and I hope you guys are all doing really well. For the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. If you would like more scary stories too, you can click on the card at the top right of your screen or on one of the annotations on your screen right now. As always guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates throughout the week. And also, if you would like content early and completely advert-free for as little as $1 a month, feel free to click on the link to my Patreon account and sign up there for regular MP3 format stories. Thanks again for tuning in and for all the love as always, guys, and I'll see you mates in the next one.